2030.
Saudi Arabia, the point of investment fund,
it's a
there's
big
a lot of excitement
this
around
transformational
specifically.
change. Every aspect of the kingdom, economic, social, cultural, religious.
The 2030.
This is the 2030.
Yalla.
This is the 2030 episode 28. Dr. Hanaa Almoaibed, hello from Al Khobar. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah. Tell us about it. You're in Al Khobar. You're at your family home. It's super late there. Sorry to bring you into the conversation at this time. What time is it there? Like 8,
No, it's
7?
it's 6:20 p.m. Oh. It's still not too late. The night is young.
The night is young. And the 2030 is young, and we have an amazing
The 2030 is getting older, though, isn't it? We're getting toward a really big birthday.
Up there. That's right, 28. We're going to be celebrating 30 soon when we get anxiety about how old we're getting. This week, I have an amazing interview and conversation with Dr. Hassan Albalawi from WakeCap Technologies. We're really entering our interview and conversation era now, Dr. Hanaa, now that we've had our sort of summer lull. But this is an amazing one to start ramping up again with. Hassan has an amazing story to tell. He's from Tabuk in the northwest of Saudi Arabia, from a huge traditional family, the eldest child in a family of, I think, 14 children, he said, which is a story in its own. Took his first flight ever as a teenager to the United States. When he left years later, he had a PhD from Duke, and now he's running one of the true entrepreneurial success stories in Saudi Arabia, booming business, disrupting the construction tech industry, not just in Saudi, but around the world. These are the stories and companies we love highlighting on the 2030 with our growing audience of now 14,000 subscribers. Dr. Hanaa, mabruk to you, and to millions more around the world who are seeing our content. It's a true story of Saudi Arabia investing in its citizens. He's also a cool dude. You guys are going to love this.
Yeah, I really enjoyed our conversation with him. And I think there are a lot of Saudis, young Saudis, that left as teenagers and came back with incredible degrees and great stories. And, sometimes they end up just being stars in different organizations. But what I love about Hassan's story is that he really took it to the next level. He started his own company in a sector that he wasn't necessarily passionate about, but he really saw a market gap in. And he is just, I love what they do. I love his passion for it. And he just has a great way of telling the story as well. So I think everybody's going to enjoy listening to this.
We don't want to kind of tease too much about the interview, but it really is good. He's got some great anecdotes in there. He's running the kind of company, it's a technology company that builds in the technology into the hard hat of workers to keep them safe and to keep employers tracking them and maximize productivity. But it's like one of those companies where you hear about it and you're like, how has this not existed before? How did they manage this before WakeCap came along with their innovative solution? It's just cool. Let's get to it right now, Dr. Hanaa. Our guest today on the 2030 main stage, Dr. Hassan Albalawi, Saudi entrepreneur and CEO and founder of the construction tech company WakeCap Technologies, one of the true startup success stories in the kingdom. WakeCap solutions improve safety and productivity at the job site and helps construction companies quantify labor productivity, automate workforce logistics. In July, WakeCap acquired a Silicon Valley company and will leverage it to open a research and development headquarters in California. They are absolutely on fire right now. Dr. Hassan's a PhD from Duke University, the Blue Devils, one of the top 10 universities in the United States, of course. Dr. Hassan, thanks so much for joining us on the 2030.
Well, thanks to you for hosting me. It's very exciting to be away from a construction project. I think we are on fire because I think Saudi is on fire. That's the true reason. Everything here is going crazy. Everybody want to deliver huge projects. And one thing I really love about this industry is that it's full of problems. But thanks for hosting me. Looking forward to it.
It's wonderful to have you on the show, Dr. Hassan. And I would love to start with your story first. You've had an amazing journey so far. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from and more about your journey?
In September 11, 2005, I left Tabuk on a Thope heading to the US for the first time ever because I got a scholar to go to study in the US. And I was a bit kind of, I would say, embarrassed to go with the jeans. So I went with the Thope from Tabuk. heading to Jeddah, going to Atlanta. That was like the plan, going to the US for the first time ever. And for some reason, I thought everybody on the plane is going to the US because that was like, again, my first flight too. So it was an interesting journey to go with the broken English. And I remember somebody was, he looks like, like he looks American. So I just came to him and said, you America? He said, yep. I was like, okay, this is my ticket to the US. Stay with him. We had a stopover in Paris. And when I went there, I was just following him because this is where we're going to get to the US. He got into the gate, but when it reached me, I mean, they told me, look, the plane is full. You have to wait. So I was like, okay. I stayed for like almost 24 hours thinking that the plane is full, so the next one will come. Not realizing that was not even my gate. And that's how I started my journey to the US. So 2 days later, I arrived into the US with my thope because it was not easy to change my thope in Jeddah as planned. So I got stuck with the thope for 3 days. Left Tabuk September 11, 2005. Arrived on September 14th, which is my birthday, in the US. And it was an interesting journey to start it like that. Fast forward like 5-7 years later, I got to know about the Ivy League schools, and I was like really interested in getting my, let's say, my PhD was given because look, I have like 15 brothers and sisters. 9 of them has a PhD. My father has a PhD. So it was like given, you have to do it. It wasn't like, oh, well, a goal. It was expected to get it done. And they set the bar a bit high. I'm the oldest actually of all my brothers and sisters because I wasn't, I would say, sure what to do in the US or where to study. So I went to the first school I got accepted to. They were not like an understanding of where I should go after I didn't even know there was like rating for the school. So when I finished my bachelor degree in Philadelphia in a school called Widener University, I remember my professor was telling me, okay, you should actually go apply for some university out there that helps you with some research. Because I got like perfect score in GMAT, I got accepted in many universities. So it was like, okay, good. Let's actually go and look for the best one. So it was an interesting journey that I ended up with Carnegie Mellon, and then I went to Duke. But it wasn't like really planned. It was like, for me, I was looking for the best school I should be into. In 2015, I got accepted into a program called the Stars of Science in Qatar. And that was like my introduction to entrepreneurship. And when I tasted entrepreneurship, I was like, that was much more exciting. All my studies have been in electrical engineering, doing signal processing, and my PhD was on chip machine learning. So everything I was doing is like, okay, how can I build huge models that runs on a very small devices? And this is where the application I started with was drowsiness detection. That's hence the name WakeCap. I thought construction needed a drowsiness detection system until I got the first punch on the face saying, well, actually, you have no idea where people are, and you want to tell me they're drowsy. And I got to know that from going to the site as a business validation exercise when I joined Stars of Science. And that was like the lesson I learned. I was like, okay, it's very exciting to get into this industry, and it was very also interesting to know that they didn't even know where people are. I was like, come on, we got phones, we got this, we got that, and they said, look, come to any of our sites, get 100 workers, give them your solution or whatever solution you want to build, but you are not allowed to talk to workers because they speak so many languages. Training costs money. It needs to be very simple, but you're not allowed to get the site support as well. So there's no internet, no electricity, and most importantly, the solution needs to work for at least a month because battery is also a problem. This is when I realized, the digitizing a construction site is really, really hard. But I got excited about this, and I pivoted WakeCap from drowsiness detection to tracking people. Fast forward a couple years later, when I built the first prototype when I was in Qatar, and then there is a thought like, okay, my new path: launch a company in Qatar, build, a big company, and then Saudi Qatar clash happens. I was like, come on, I need to go somewhere else now. Finding or even funding the project was challenging, but it was one of the best things happened to me personally. It's to leave Qatar because I was locked into the thinking this is the only place I should actually be able to start a company. And I went to Dubai trying to raise money for a hardware startup for the first time ever, in a place where everybody is investing in software and delivery apps. So nobody actually, I remember somebody told me, like, you have a triple risk. You're a hardware company, first time founder in construction. It's not interesting at all. So yeah, but the same guy who told me that actually later on he regretted not to invest. So I was like, okay, but I was just stubborn enough, lucky to be in this industry with everything going on after that. So I believe we were like at the right place at the right time, doing something crazy that then turned out to be very interesting and very useful in a booming industry.
I really want to get into WakeCap because there's a lot that we would like to learn about it. And I'd love for you to just start by just telling us a little bit more about WakeCap, what WakeCap does.
Sure. So WakeCap started as a solution to overcome one of the biggest problem in the industry, which is knowing where people are. Like, it's a very labor intensive. And you ask, like, if you go to any construction project, you ask them, do you know how many people do you have? They would say, like, oh, that would be great if we actually can do that, but we know we don't. We'll have to go and check, like, how many people comes in, where they are. I remember we were in a project in Dubai with 3,000 people, and they did a fire drill. I was surprised. I was like, okay, they are doing this for safety because they were making sure. Turns out the project was delayed, and the owner way of making sure to check the actual number of people is coming to the site and doing a fire drill and counting how many people comes out. And I was like, really? Like, you really? He's like, yep, that's the gold standard. If they are delayed, they promised with 6,000 people, but we only found 3,000, and we can dispute. And this is when I realized, oh, interesting. But we can't tell you how many people on site. So WakeCap started as a solution to really solve the biggest problem in construction, which is getting technology to the field. And that was the flagship product. It's like the industry as a whole. I talked to Trimble, Bechtel, CCC, like all the big companies. They think of it like a dream that you want to know where people are at any given moment, because construction is very hard. So that was the main issue that we had to address back in 2018. So we built a sensor integrated into the hard hat that lasts for like a year and a half. I remember the first contractor who gave us the challenge I mentioned earlier, which is come connect my workers, but don't talk to them. Number two, no site support. There is no internet. There is no electricity. And number three, it needs to work for at least a month. When we got that done, they became the first investor. And this is when we realized, oh, we're and they remember they were explaining to me the value. They were like, you don't even realize how big of a value this is. And that was true. I mean, that's definitely true, because a few years later, I realized that, oh, we collect so much data that is it's interesting for multiple stakeholders. However, in construction, the situation is a little bit difficult to describe. The way I would look into it at that time, it was like, let's make the technology work, and then I'll figure out what happened next. We were lucky to have some investors like Graphene Venture to mentor us on what's important, because at that time, as an entrepreneur, I was looking at so many problems, and I'm trying to really figure out what should I focus on. Graphene Venture, led by Nabil Noor, I remember he told me, look, you solve the technical problem right now. Let's make sure we can scale it. And the way you want to validate the solution or the product market fit in a construction, try to sell it to one contractor. Can you do that? That was like the challenge. So WakeCap was building a solution to track where people are. And I remember we showed it to the contractor. And he said, okay, cool. So what? I was like, what do you mean? Like, you can see how many people you have on site. And this is, we call it then later, the so what problem. You really need to give it to them as a value. So we got the value in terms of automating their timekeeping. We tell them where people are not, spending their time. And then we started linking the data together until it hit me when the fire drill problem. I was on the site. It was with the project for MR. And MR, did the fire drill, thinking of, oh, that's the best way to monitor people. I told them, well, I can't tell you how many people inside. 2 years later, AMR mandated the solution in every project. It became standard. Like they're like, okay, we need to know where people are, and we need to actually make sure that this technology is deployed in these projects. The relationship between contractor and owner, it's very hard to describe, other than the fact that when it comes to data and technology, the best way for any technology vendor, the hard truth, it needs to be mandated by owners, especially if it collect or expose what's going on site. And not to mention if it's a safety oriented, it needs to be mandated, regulated. If it's, because safety is one of those things that are required but considered not productive. It's like something you do that doesn't contribute to the productivity of the project, but it's required. So if it's not mandated, people have the tendency to skip them. And that's like kind of how WakeCap started. Then we started integrating solutions together. And this is when things got actually much more interesting. When we started tracking people and knowing where they are, we solved one problem, but it exposed like 10 other problems. And this is where things got interesting. So we started building safety solution, thinking everybody cares about safety. 3 years, we're building safety solution. I just shut it down. I was like, it doesn't work. Nobody cares about safety, because we were talking to the wrong audience, I believe. And the wrong audience represented by, if it's not mandated, why would I do it? That was like the mentality or the around. And honestly, this is global. Like everybody thinks that there are different regions who cares about safety more. I believe it's actually by sector and by stakeholder. Owners always care about safety because they want to deliver the project with zero incident. Therefore, it needs to be mandated. Contractors like to talk about safety, but they don't spend or invest in safety. And I kind of like feel for them, because if it's not required, their margin is really single digits. So the competitive, like if they invest in safety and they don't see the direct ROI, they feel that they won't actually get their return of investment, even though statistically speaking, every dollar you invest, you get like $4 back. But that's something that they don't see as right. They run project by project. So with that, we had to really start expanding our services. We started talking to different people, different companies. And this when we started talking to Aramco. Aramco actually enabled, I remember we went with all the safety solutions that we built 3 years back, and all of them worked. And this is when I realized, okay, this is how safety needs to be done. We got to actually expand into our services. And one last thing I would mention that I realized was a company would come to us and say, oh, we need X and Y and Z. And I was like, this doesn't make sense. There is no solution on earth that can actually do that. But what we realized later, what they are trying to say is like, look, we don't want to deal with so many vendors. We need a system integrator that actually provides us with different solutions. And when we realized that, we were like, okay, but we built everything thinking that we want to be I call it a good piece of a big puzzle where someone else is doing the integration. Turns out in construction, there are only 2 types of a system integrator, and both of them don't work. There are the IT companies that owners sometimes bring to integrate solutions. And they fail because they never try to bring solution to the field. And hence they say, well, technology doesn't work on construction. That's not true because they bring an off-the-shelf solution than others, but they're not on the site. It's very hard to bring an IT company to a construction site. Number two, the other side of approach is sometimes an owner would ask a contractor to become that system integrator. And they also fail mainly either because it's not their job or they know how to do, but they don't want to share the data. Both of which I have seen. And this is when a new role emerged, that a data contractor. So owners started actually talking about, oh, we need to have a data contractor to consolidate and integrate things together. And this is kind of the role that WakeCap has been playing for the last couple of years, not only providing WakeCap, but integrating other solutions. Hence, we acquired Crow by Core because we feel that field management, tracking activity, tracking what's going on the site, can tell you everything going on about the project. Give you an example. If I know how many people on site, okay, there are 10 people in this area. That's cool, but it doesn't have the context. When you know what activity is supposed to be there, the 10 people could be good news or could be bad news, depending on the context. And what Cruise by Core is giving us that context that allow us to embed and integrate those information together.
Before I ask a little bit more about the tech itself, I want to ask you a question. So WakeCap is based in Riyadh, but LinkedIn says you're based in Dubai. So what's the reason for that?
That's a good question. So we started actually in Dubai. We started first in the US. And then I got the first check from a Silicon Valley company called SOSV. They took us they took us to China to build the first hardware. When I tried to look for the first pilot, it was the pilot I was talking about earlier that they gave us the 1 month challenge. At that time, we did the pilot in Dubai. But then I came back to San Francisco thinking, okay, let me actually just find my way in the US. And this is when I met Darren Bechtel. Darren Bechtel basically is the brother of the CEO, the Bechtel company, the biggest construction company in the world. He told me, look, don't waste your time in the US because what you're trying to solve is a construction fundamental problems, and you will be dealing with so many non-technical issues here. They invested in a similar company before that failed to work in the US because of so many non-technical issues, the way he described it. Labors are not welcoming tracking solution easily. And I told them, well, I'm working with a big company called CCC in Dubai. So he said, yep, drop everything, go to Dubai, make sure the technology works. Then everybody will adopt it because what you're promising is huge. So that's why we went to Dubai. It was the first pilot. We grew from there. So we had our first operational office in Dubai. Then we expand into Saudi. I actually had a trip to Saudi to demo the solution to Aramco right after COVID. And that accelerated everything to start in Saudi. But that was a good move, honestly. It wasn't it just accelerated our plans. Our headquarters moved from Dubai to Saudi about 2 years ago. And our other headquarters with Crow by Core, it's in San Francisco. So this is where we are right now. We are global, diverse by design, more than 100 employees, more than, I think, right now we 13 languages and all the religions, the main ones. And what else? Yeah, and I think more than 14 different countries.
Yeah, that's amazing. When you say non-technical solutions in the US, that means things like personal tracking concerns, worker safety, things like that. And then you also have unions to deal with, and then you have the legal regulations. That was really good advice that you got, even though I feel like your solution would do really well here. Worker safety is something that's actually kind of near and dear to both of our hearts. Dr. Hanaa's expertise is on labor markets, empowerment of youth, employment. I'm the son of 2 U.S. federal officials who worked at the Department of Labor and with OSHA specifically.
Oh, wow.
So I kind of am interesting to see, because where did you come up? So worker safety and productivity, did it kind of just hit you when you were in the U.S.? You saw this need as you described, or is it something that has been interesting to you for longer than that?
Oh, to be honest, I got to construction by accident. It wasn't even planned. If I told you anything, I think I'd be lying. I got to construction because I thought a drowsiness detection application was interesting. I looked at drivers. It was really dead in the water because the best way to avoid drowsiness related accident is by removing the person or the driver from the equation. So autonomous will solve that problem. And then I started looking at different application to a certain, and it was okay. Drowsiness detection. That was an application. I saw a research paper saying 40% of crane accident happen due to non-technical, like non-mechanical nor electrical reasons. So more or less it could be fatigue. So I went with it. It was it wasn't like a full market research or I have like really kind of passion to construction, but I got sucked into it by a one paper that was talking about construction crane issues. And there was my thesis was on building on-chip machine learning. So I was looking for an application that processed so much data in a very small devices. Went to construction, built the first joint stores of science, got to build the first prototype, went to the crane operator, and turns out after he go all the way there, he took off the helmet. I was like, come on. I thought, and this is when we went to construction worker to track their drowsiness, and just they said, look, we don't care about drowsiness. We don't know even where they are. So from there, I got sucked into construction problems. And the funny thing is, when I was talking to one of the expert in innovation in construction, Professor Brahim, he said, it's funny that a lot of innovation happen in construction come from people outside the construction. I was like, what do you think that is? He's like, because they're so too crazy to actually get in and try to solve it. And the people who are doing the construction or into construction, they're too busy to solve their own problems. And it was just an interesting take. But I'm so glad that you're actually talking. I mean, your family history and your experience, both of you, is very interesting because, we have 7 projects right now in the US. And we got there in such a way because of safety, but for totally different reason. It's funny how people are using the solution, and I'm trying to kind of connect the dots of how things work. But one thing for sure I have seen in construction, you build a solution technically the same way, but you approach the market differently. Let me give you an example. We started in Dubai, and then we moved to Saudi, tracking for building to enhance safety and productivity, which actually worked at the same way. And what I mean working the same way is one of the problems that we had to overcome was how to get technology into the field, but not to overcome just the technical, but also the non-technical issue. I'll give you an example. When you wear the helmet, we had to really come up with a way to really link the safety and productivity together. And one of the things that we found very interesting was a contractor, for example, care about their payroll. So we showed them a value to safety, but with a direct return of investment from productivity. And the way we have done that, we said, look, we put a motion sensor in the helmet that can tell if you're wearing the helmet or not. If you're not wearing the helmet, that means the workers are either not on the site or working on the site without the helmet. Either way, you shouldn't pay them. He's like, oh, that's brilliant. So I'm going to only pay for safe hours. I was like, yep, you pay for safe hours. Contractors who are not obligated to use the technology for safety were not actually interested to pay additional money for safety, but that solved their problem. So it gives them both safety and productivity at the same time. In fact, you cannot argue with safety. That's the fun part that actually overcomes. So we showed them the ROI, the saving of reduction of overbilling and other things. But when it comes to implementation, they say, well, it's a safety device. You got to wear it. That worked for them. Then I had another conflict when I was in Dubai when I started. I had a conflict about how do the worker feel? Like, are we screwing the workers or helping the workers? That conflict was happening to me at the beginning, like what's really happening? I mean, does it look that we are forcing the workers? But what I found in the first about 3 months, workers started showing up and saying to us, why do we still vet hour if you are generating a report? I was like, what do you mean by vetting hours? They said, look, you look at, okay, you see that guy? He is a timekeeper. If he likes us, he'll give us more hours. If he doesn't, we're screwed. So I said, okay, so we should just automate that. They said, yes. So we went to the project director. We told him about the vetting process. He removed the vetting process. And what happened, all the bad apple got flushed. There was a strike. He fired some of them, but all the good apple. I mean, this is when it's like, I realized, oh, we're really helping them, because workers started coming to us asking for, oh, can you please give me another helmet for my cousin who is in another project? I was like, why? He's like, because look, I can see my hours. It turns out they're using it to prove that they were there for their hours. And this is when we realized, okay, so we go to the workers, we tell them what the solution is. So when we go to project, we don't the worker, we tell the worker what's in it for them. They have access to their hours. And that got us to really start thinking, okay, any market we need to expand to, we need to figure out what's in it for the worker. If we figure this out, everything else act the same. The productivity values, the safety, propagated all the way to the owners, it becomes the same thing. So in the US, what happened, we've been trying, by the way, it's like to enter the US for like a couple of years. Just didn't work, like for various reasons. But in New York, a contractor reached out to us. He said, look, there is a problem we have where people are faking hours, and this is not the problem, but the more of the problem, they put their names on the timesheet, and then we get claims, and these claims goes to the court, where insurance companies are forcing us to settle. And we get sued like for millions, and they try to settle, and it's all like not true. I was like, okay, tell me more. What do you mean they're getting sued and doing all of this? He said, if we have your solution, we can prove to the insurance companies that the person who claims or is trying to sue us, he was not even on the site. He didn't have any record of them. I was like, but don't you have like access control? He's like, yes, but people find their way around, put their name on the timesheet, and then they like just basically claims that. And we need to show that if we have a solution that tells us the data. So they were looking at it from one angle. Let's prove to the insurance companies that the fall that being claimed didn't really happen, because we have like fall detection, we have panic buttons. And they were like so fixated on the fact on, let's just tell us for a fall detection. So we said, okay, here is a fall detection sensor. So they gave us a couple of projects, and they started asking simple questions. I was like, guys, but what's in it for the workers? So what do you mean? Like, we're taking care of them, we're doing safety. I was like, no. We need to figure out like some sort of a value. And this is where we are right now doing. We're trying to figure out what's in it for the New York workers, the unions. And we started talking to them. And there's two things I found still potential viable values to the construction workers over there. Get them to be paid on the same day. That's really interesting. Number two, you can actually motivate them to give you more data if you are able to combine their good behavior with additional bonuses. So for example, if a worker spent 80% of their time in their assigned zone, that's a huge value to improve to safety. You just reducing waste hours. Accident happened because you're at the wrong place at the wrong time. If you incentivize the workers to say, look, this week you spend 80% of your hours for the 2 weeks in a row, here is a bonus. If you incentivize those actions, I think it will motivate them to give you more data. But that's our experience so far with New York, we have been there for almost 6 months right now, in 7 projects, and I'm yet to really, I call it the 0 to 1 problem in this market. So excited about what we can do in the US by focusing only in one area, New York.
Yeah, so you're you're smart to start in New York, because if you make it there, you can make it
That's
anywhere.
what everyone
They
told
have
me.
some of the toughest laws when it comes to safety, and also I
Unions.
think your approach toward the market when it comes to incentivizing workers is genius. The only people that may not like it are the ones that are not working or are not interested in safety or are greasing up the guy keeping the timesheet and trying to get extra hours. So I think the solution, I think maybe we think the solution is genius for that reason. And I'm really excited for it to come across America, because I see so many construction projects where there's like a hole and there's like one dude in there like digging or whatever, and then there's 20 guys standing around just talking, just hanging out. And it's the type of thing where you're like, it doesn't look terribly efficient, but that's okay. Just really cool tech. So I guess if we could, let's zoom out here and talk a little bit about the construction market with a focus on Saudi Arabia. I mean, you mentioned it earlier. It's a building boom. It is a building boom kind of on a deadline. And that usually is a tough combination for workers, right? Because you need to hit these deadlines, and then you have the contractors saying, hey, hurry up, guys. And then everybody wants to be happy. And so I guess I'm kind of interested in asking about the Saudi market as a whole. Can you tell us a little bit about the projects you're working on in Saudi Arabia, or some of your customers in Saudi Arabia? And then, how do you see WakeCap making an impact on the Saudi market today?
The Saudi opportunity when it comes to construction, I look at it even beyond what's happening. So let's break down. Number one, there is no way we're going to deliver those projects on time in the traditional way. So we are like forced to figure out our way to innovate, come up with new ways to really deliver those. And that's actually like excites me, because that's the only way. I don't know if you heard about the 10 is easier than 2, the book, which is basically saying, look, if you're going to ask somebody to double their effort or double their outcomes, they will think it's always to double their effort. But if you tell them, I need 10x the outcomes, you kind of like force them to think with new ways to maximize their or get their outcomes to 10x. And I think this is what's happening to construction in Saudi. It's like they put this, what everyone might actually think it's unrealistic, and then it becomes, oh, it's actually maybe. And then they see people are maybe we're not gonna reach exactly the same vision, but we're being stretched to think differently in this industry. And then the second piece of it is the opportunity that it creates. And I'm not talking about the opportunity, the direct one with the real estate. I'm talking about construction technology opportunity. And the way I see it from my perspective is that for construction to really change, you can see the construction management software is very fragmented, and the way to change industry, our vision is like, okay, we need to build the next era of construction management software, and to do that we need 3 things. Number one, we need a kick-ass technical team. We need the best technical team in the world. And what I mean is like we need to build enterprise, we need to build hardware, we need to innovate, and we need to have that really, really strong technical team. And we got that. I'm so proud of my team, international, diverse, world class, and we got that checked. Number two, we need subject matter expert. The subject matter expert I'm looking for is those people who understand the purpose of construction and how it works, in order to fix what they call digitization. Today, it's really not digitization, it's digitalization, which we need to fix. So you look at digital tool today, and it's like a tool to digitalize a process that is done in paper. But what you need people to think of the process that, or the purpose of that process, and then understand what technology brings to the table to reinvent the process, maybe even eliminate the process altogether. And you cannot do that with just technology people. You need subject matter expert who works for you, who works and dedicate to understand the technology. So we got those. We basically, I call it, there is a magic formula. If you are like in technology and have experience in construction, you got the magic formula. You get like I'm hiring you. If you have technology background and spend I would say 10, 15 years in construction and you're still interested in construction, then you're either really crazy to stay there or you are in love with the industry. And we found that those actually are crazy enough to fix this problem. And then you need those. And the third piece, you need an opportunity. One thing I found in construction, we build different feature and different solution. We test like so many kind of ideas. One thing we realized when we solve a problem in a project, usually that project doesn't benefit from that feature that was created on that project. It's actually the next project. Therefore, the opportunity we need is the learning compound that we get from one project to another. And this is basically what Saudi is giving us. They're saying, come over, let's figure out how to do this because we need everyone in the world to help us deliver this vision. If you got an idea, we're gonna give you what they call safe place to fail. Come and try. If it failed, well, we really appreciate your effort to try. And the best example of the companies that I can like really give credit for are Saudi Aramco. Aramco, like they even incentivize their team to bring in new solutions. They are pushing for trying new things, and this allowed us to bring so many companies from around the world to try their solution, their approaches in Saudi. So Saudi became like that hub for crazy ideas, solutions around the world to be validated really quickly, away from any innovation team. So let me clarify that. I'm in a group called the CTech Club, and we are like over 400 founders in construction. And one thing we kind of like realize when you work with the innovation team, like when you have either an owner or a contractor have like an innovation team, you want to stay away from them. The reason for that is you go and work with them, and they are the one who, in a company, go to the project team who are really busy, and the project team looked at them and was like, okay, don't bring me another toy to test, please. Like just drop it. And we find like working with innovation teams starts like backfiring to the point where it doesn't work anymore. So we start avoiding them by talking directly to the project team and trying to figure out how to like bring our solution to the team who really need it. Now, when we saw that, we started in Saudi bringing companies by letting them access the project directly instead of going through innovation and going through a loop of trials and POCs. We created this safe place to fail concept within Aramco, and we did it with like about 10 companies. And when I saw that, I was like, we need to do something about it. And this motivated me to start Saudi Contech, which is an initiative led by my friend Fahid Rogi. Saudi Contech is meant to really leverage what's going on in Saudi by enabling what we did in Aramco, but at scale. It has 3 pillars. Pillar number 1 is awareness. We find ourselves that when we talk to owners and others, we need to create awareness about what's going on, what technology, so they understand what's possible. Therefore, they mandate it in their project. And this goes for government, regulators, all of that. And then the second pillar is process. When we bring solution to the construction projects, usually we find people are not following the right process. And they was like, okay, man, if they just follow the best practice without even any technology, they could have saved so much money. And this is when we realized we need specialized like lean construction, smart BIM, smart build, all of these entities that comes with the best standards to come to Saudi. And we're proud to actually launch the first one. And the third pillar is accelerator, which is what we did in WakeCap to bring companies to Aramco projects. We want to do it now at scale by launching accelerators and eventually partnering with different products. But our motto to those founders, no innovation team. we're going to get you to the project as soon as possible. We're going to give you the quick no. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, you get to know fast enough. And we save them time and effort by accessing the market very, very quickly. And we call it, let's give you more reasons to move to Saudi. If we give you at least 3 projects, enough revenue to relocate, that's the contract between us. And it has been very exciting, but still we're really early in the process, but it's very promising.
That's really, I mean, that's a really interesting way of thinking about kind of what's happening in the Saudi market, right? From your point of view, and in terms of the types of services that you're offering and how you're taking your experience with Aramco and then trying to offer it to everybody else to elevate the sector as a whole, which I definitely think is something we need to do. And one of the things that I think we talk about a lot within the construction sector, and not thinking specifically about tech in the construction sector, but just the sector as a whole, we're often talking about talent and recruitment and people. But I would like to know a little bit about how that intersects with what you do and how you're finding, like, what kind of talent are you looking for to recruit? And then how are you finding that, and how are you working to help develop talent as well?
Yeah, honestly, that's a very tough question, because I think I don't know the answer to that. That's the truth. In construction, the challenge right now is they want to do a lot of things, but we don't have the talent. There's a labor shortage at every level. The way maybe that motivates some of the youngster and others to really get into it is getting technology to help. So the technology that I find interesting to work with are the ones that doesn't require a lot of skills, but it has enough tech that attract people to know how it works. So you got the robotics, you got the drones, you got the different kind of combination, but yet the concept and the understanding the problem is also critical to keep up with. There is a lack of training in many aspects, and the lack of incentives. I mean, one of the things that I feel it might help and contribute to fix the problem is business alignment. Like, why would a contractor be incentivized to share the data if it's a lump sum, for example? Like these business alignment to motivate them to actually invest in recruiting more people or training more people or share the knowledge. I found this study in the US that says, if you make people work for 4 days, they become more productive. So I went to the project director. I was like, man, look, you should apply this. He's like, are you crazy? This is not going to work here. I said, why? They tested it. He said, you're forgetting one very little point here. In the US, the people are living there. So they're not really coming from there, leaving the country, living. So when you tell him, okay, let's work longer hours for 4 days and take 3 days with your family, it makes sense. But if we tell the workers who left their family, who are living in a camp, and tell them that you're going to only work, I'm going to give you 3 days off, they're going to eat you alive. Because they left their family to come here and work. If it was up to them, they would work for 20 hours a day. And that's got me thinking of what else we're talking about here. It's more like a culture and what level of people that you want to invest in to come here and live here that might actually also contribute. I mean, we lack engineers, we lack managers, we lack project directors. We have every level in construction, speaking even in Saudi here, and I'm seeing it elsewhere. So the talent pool is shrinking, and we need to figure out how to incentivize them with not only with what they can do at the site, but also the quality of life, how to attract people to come to Saudi to do this. And this is how I see things from my perspective, but it is a big challenge.
That's actually a really great kind of segue into talking a little bit about entrepreneurship in general in Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia really wants to be the Silicon Valley of the region and then a player in tech in the world. And it's at the very beginning of that journey. And we talked a little bit about earlier in this interview, just sort of about how at first there was a lot of some of the same technologies over and over. And that's one of the things that made you stand out in construction tech, because it wasn't, food delivery apps. It was sort of outside of the norm of what people were seeing, and therefore, for some anyway, was exciting. And I guess we're a little curious about your journey as an entrepreneur. Are there things that you can sort of tell other Saudi entrepreneurs that are listening to this or watching this to help them? I mean, because what works in Silicon Valley, in China, and India for those startup ecosystems may not necessarily work in Saudi Arabia. So I'm wondering if there's any things that you'd like to tell entrepreneurs who are listening to this, wondering how to get where you are now.
No, absolutely. Definitely. Like the one thing I can say about that is that if you have to tell an entrepreneur what to do, they're not really entrepreneurs, because the entrepreneurs usually are like crazy enough to really figure out problems. And I feel it's the same elsewhere. So you need to be like, you need to really love what you do to be an entrepreneur. And there's like a lot to say about that, but I'll just mention a personal story where I find it very difficult to convince my mom that I like what I do. And she's like, you leave at 4 a.m. You come back at 9 p.m. There's no way. Like, she feels sorry for me. I was like, no, you don't. I'm enjoying what I do. And I don't think she believes me. Like, still. And I'm trying to explain to her, look, if I don't like what I do, I would be burned out right now and be like miserable and, But I didn't think she'd get it. But she's like, look, I pray for you. I'm happy for you since you're happy. I talk to potential entrepreneurs or some like want to be an entrepreneur. And I feel the role comes to scare them. Not because I don't want them to be an entrepreneur. Because if they listen to me, then they're not an entrepreneur. So that's good. But if they were an entrepreneur, they would have actually ignored me and they would still do it. That's how I'm looking at it. It's good to be like crazy way of looking at it, but I found it's if it's not going to kill, it's going to make you stronger, kind of a thing.
So you said something earlier that I thought was super interesting, where you were saying that, like, especially when you're thinking about talent and you're thinking about getting people into an industry that they might be reluctant to go into, if you kind of integrate tech into that industry, it's going to change the way people think about the job, the work. It elevates it to some level, I think, which is, I think it's a really important note. I read a lot about the future of work and think a lot about what people are afraid of, and actually, a lot of what people are writing about is that we shouldn't be afraid of the tech that's coming. We should be learning how to use it better. And then that's how we're going to elevate future work. But I think that, there's a move toward tech, and we talked about this in Saudi as a whole, right? The whole kind of ecosystem's changing, and you're a product of Saudi investing in its citizens, which was quite a successful investment, obviously. So I think what I'm trying to ask is, in thinking about the future and in thinking about where Saudi needs to be investing because of those fears that exist about where, what we're going to be doing in the future, what are jobs going to look like? How are we going to continue to make more success stories where people are harnessing the opportunities in the future rather than fearing them?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because the people who are the funny thing with technology is we cannot predict how it's used. I always remember the example I lived through, even though I was like really young, but it's like just resonate with me, is like how people missed that SMS will take over calls. Like nobody, like pager came in and people were like calling with phones. And he's like, of course, if I have a mobile phone, I'll just call you. Why would I like text you? What is this SMS thing? It just didn't make sense. But then it took over. Like it's just like that unpredictability, or like I would say, we're so bad in predicting how technology gonna be used. Give entrepreneurs opportunities. Otherwise, big companies will be big forever, and there will be no opportunity for others. And that fall into the same thing with how people try to forecast how technology gonna change their lives. We're really bad at that. I mean, there are like few people who are really smart enough, or maybe lucky enough, to build the wrong thing, and then at the right time it just hit. I always call, when it comes to forecasting technology and construction. You see, like people who build deep tech, they build it in such a way to forecast the train of that sector, that actually the readiness train of technology. So they build a very advanced technology hoping that readiness of a specific sector will catch up. So they always like build for the future, except in construction. That train is actually not only stopped, it's like on its side. So when you build a technology for construction, you have to say, okay, forget the forecasting the future. Go to the site, see what's not working, and fix it. Then try to improve on top of that. And that's what's unique about construction. It's just there is a lot of assumptions around what's working and what's not. But the good thing about construction for entrepreneur or people who you don't need to really forecast the future. Just go to your closest project and see what's going on, and you will see a lot of things wrong that could be fixed with technology, starting with Excel, or starting with the process, starting with like how people gather, how people plan, how people, and it's a big market. So when it comes to technology, construction actually are making it easier for people. The question becomes, how do you differentiate between what they want and what they need? And it's very tricky. You can build what they want and then they see it and it doesn't work. So I would say the magic wand that for any project is like, if I mean, maybe with AI right now, it's gonna, we find it's like easier to do a quick discovery, because the assumption that you're dealing with construction is they're telling you what they feel right now, but they don't tell you what they really need. It's, you hear so many stories about how people build billion-dollar companies by going and talking to the people and figuring out. If you want to rebuild a technology very quickly, go to the construction industry. Like you will see so many problems to solve, and every market has its own unique flavor, and the market is so big to cover. So that's how I look at it.
So, two things you mentioned. We need to finish up, unfortunately, but I do want to ask you, because you mentioned two really interesting things in that answer. One is AI. How are you working AI into what you're doing? Everybody's talking about AI. Are you using that now? Is it something you're targeting in the future?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those buzzwords that if you say it, it's a problem. If you didn't say it, it's a problem. But I'll tell you how we think about it. So AI, I think we're looking into it from the perspective of there is AI that works always, like on demand. Like I'm stealing this from the founder of Superhuman. I really like how he think about it. It gave me like a good framework. He said there's three levels of AI, like an evolution. There is stuff that only work when you, on demand, like you ask question, it answer. That's like ChatGPT and others. And there is stuff that should always be running, and that's the second level. So you have so much data, you just come back and show what's result you want, and then you want to go to the level of I want to ask AI that what's really happening, and it's like knowledgeable enough. We have a subject matter expert with 35 years of experience. His name is Basil. So we are saying, okay, we want to build Basil GPT, because Basil have like so much experience in construction. When we tell him about what's going on in a certain project, he have a guess. He's like, go check the supervisor. He might not be spending so much time on there. So we build a feature that, okay, we call it, let's look for the supervisor. And we realize, oh, the supervisor never actually, he's like never gets off his score. And unsupervised work lead to this kind of result, which is people are there, but there is not productive work. So he's like, yes, of course, because they're wasting time, and the supervisor is not there. So they're not gonna go look for the supervisor when they get stuck. Therefore, so he got it all in his head by just telling him people are not productive, but they are there wearing the helmet. What's going on? And this is how we're thinking about the AI. We collected more than 100 million hours logged, and we are collecting more data as we every day. And with AI right now, we believe it's just figuring out what questions, what thing. I mean, what should we be doing on demand? What should we be doing that's always running, like those agents. And lastly, if we're going to build an ask model that everybody's building, to who and to what problem we're solving? Those are the questions we are looking for. Technology is advanced, but the use cases are heading somewhere. And the only way to figure them out is to try and see what works.
So what's next for WakeCap? Obviously, you've expanded globally, doing some stuff in New York, which is amazing. What's next for you guys?
Us being in a new market, I call it the 0 to 1 problem. So we're still like trying to figure this out. Our focus is going to be in Saudi to really help deliver the vision. I'm from Tabuk, so I want to see new. So of course we're gonna play part on there. So I kept telling Neom, look, I'm here in a duty to make sure Neom is done, whether you like it or not. Whether like it's like we take it. I mean, literally, we take it personal. Like we really interested in getting this vision done. So 90% of our focus, our effort is in Saudi, because not because it's the right thing, but because we're personally invested in here. So what's next for WakeCap is to redefine the construction management, uh, starting by Saudi. And we believe if we do this in Saudi, it works everywhere, and we're really seeing it. Like I was hesitant before when I was like saying that, but one story happened, and then just like it confirmed what I do. We had one case where somebody actually passed out on the site, so we thought, oh, he might, like the contractor says, well, it was in the camp. It turns out no, he was on the site, and we saw it because we tracked the workers. But the question became like, why did he go to the site when he was sick? Turns out he was sick, but he still went to the site. It turns out if he didn't go to the site, he doesn't get an overtime. So there was an incentive for him to go and cut corners. So we built something called Digital Clinic that track all the sick leave, and if you're on the site, we monitor that and we detect that. So we prevent people from that. Doing this case, we figured it in one of Aramco project, but then we build it and solve it. Total, Chevron, Shell, all of them want the case, and we're like doing pilots around the world. But it was built in Aramco, and I was talking to Chevron, I was talking to Total before, and they were like, we don't want to track people, we don't want to deal with the non-technical issues about privacy. But now, since, and I told them like, what changed now? They said, well, safety trump privacy, because we want to make sure if something happened, we need to know it. And we actually don't have a GPS on the device that helped the case to ensure the privacy by design. We cannot track you, so it's even better than phone based tracking. So this example I'm mentioning is that we just need to focus in one market, solve one problem at a time, and everything else will follow. And this strategy have been working so good for WakeCap. That's why we're doubling down in Saudi, because it's the right thing and because we're personally invested in that.
CEO and founder of the construction tech company WakeCap Technologies, Dr. Hassan Albalawi. From a large family in Tabuk to his first flight ever to the American South and a PhD from Duke University, now founder of one of the more impressive and successful Saudi startups with WakeCap, which is disrupting the construction industry, not just in Saudi Arabia, but globally. Dr. Hassan, thank you so much. Keep building, my friend.
Thank you.
That was our conversation with Dr. Hassan Albalawi. Just an amazing guy. A good follow too on LinkedIn. He shares kind of updates of what he's doing. Another good follow on LinkedIn is the 2030 podcast. You can go on there, follow us. We'll share snippets from some of our conversations and other segments we're doing with this show. So it's a more digestible format, and you kind of get quicker updates there, as well as on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, really anywhere you are, we want to be. So thank you for all of you who have subscribed already. If you haven't done so, please do that. It helps us a lot with what we're building here. Dr. Hanaa, let's conclude this episode. We're not going to do news this week because we wanted to make sure we got the full conversation in with Dr. Hassan, but let's jump to shoutouts now.
Let's do that. My shout out today is quite sad, actually. It goes to the Saudi artist Safeya Binzagr, who passed away on Thursday, September 12th. 2024 at 84 years old. Safeya Binzagr was known as the pioneer of the kingdom's fine art movement. And she was an incredible figure, really larger than life artist. And I think the passing is really kind of a sad day for people who are at the moment really riding this incredible wave of artistic revival within the kingdom. And it's one of those stories where, she was born in 1940. She forged a path of opportunities for so many other artists to follow. And she was one of two female artists who held the first art exhibitions in the kingdom in 1968. She was born in Jeddah, was educated in Cairo, completed high school education there, and spent 3 years at finishing school in England. And in 1976, she got a diploma in art and design at Central St. Martin's University of the Arts today, London. She has seen all of the rapid changes which impacted all aspects of life within the kingdom. And, she began her artistic journey inspired to record social history, traditions, and folklore. She authored the book Saudi Arabia, An Artist's View of the Past, and a 3-decade journey with Saudi heritage. And in 1995, she established Darat Safeya Binzagr, which is a cultural center containing her artwork, cultural collection, studio, and art and literature library. I'm really happy that she was able to witness this cultural revival that's happening within the arts and culture sector in the kingdom before she passed away. I think that was really, really important for her to see, considering her early engagement with art in the kingdom. And may she rest in peace. Allah yarhamha.
May she rest in peace. She was really way ahead of the curve with the publishing of that book, An Artist's View of the Past, Saudi Arabia. It's been translated into several languages. And what I think is cool about her as well is she had that museum that was free for anybody to come go to. She really believed in growing the community and growing the ecosystem around it. I agree with you. I think it probably gave her great pleasure to see the renaissance happening in arts and culture in Saudi Arabia. Yeah, rest in peace. My shout out this week is on a happy note. So my shout out is to a gentleman named Younis Altewejri. He is a Saudi industry guy. He's a transformation advisor to the Saudi government in Riyadh. He's been high up in the Ministry of Economy and Planning and the Ministry of Industry and Mineral Resources, Ma'aden. He's a sort of Saudi industry guy by day. By night, he is a partner in an Italian bakery in Riyadh called the Rustic Bakery. So he has spent a lot of time in Italy traveling, and he partnered with a celebrated Italian baker, Francesco Luigi Carusi, who I also know and have met. And I've known Younis for 10 years, and he randomly reached out to me about a year ago when I was in Riyadh, and he said, "Hey, what's up, man? I'm starting an Italian bakery, and the secret sauce here is that we're using all sourdough ingredients, all locally made. Every chance we get to source local ingredients, we can. We're fermenting the sourdough here in-house, 100% natural ingredients as well. And, they're really trying to make a truly authentic Italian bakery in Riyadh. The Rustic Bakery is what it's called. I want to talk about the bakery itself in a second. I'm going to start getting hungry. My mouth will start watering. But it's really a partnership between two families. It's the Saudi Younis and the Italian Francesco. And they are creating this kind of boutique bakery. And it was just, my shout out is because it was just shortlisted for the Time Out Riyadh Awards this year, 2024, for its exceptionalism. And on that, if you are in Riyadh, you really have to check it out. I mean, when Younis told me, hey, we're working on this bakery and it's going to taste just like you're in Italy, I kind of thought that seems impossible. Nothing really tastes like it does in Italy. And he sent me a huge box of carbs of, sourdough breads and pastries. They are the best pastries I've ever tasted. It was one of those things where it was so much pastry and bread that I was like, I better eat all of this. It's so good. I couldn't make my way through it. Definitely gained 5 pounds in a week because I was just only eating these croissants and danishes and sourdough bread whenever I could for any meal. I just cannot praise this bakery enough. And now I'm hungry for it. They deserve this award if they get it. And if they don't get it, they deserve the recognition for being shortlisted. Shout out to Younis Altewejri and Francesco Luigi Carusi for their amazing, it's like artwork what they do. I'm gonna send, maybe in the YouTube too, we'll have some photos that I took. So I was just like, look at how awesome this looks. Just the most delicious bread you can buy in Riyadh. I can say that confidently. Shout out to them for pursuing their passion, moonlighting and building this bakery, which is having enormous success now. It's kind of like you hear about Saudi startups and entrepreneurship. A lot of it's in tech. This is in baked goods and they're crushing it. So if you're in Riyadh, check it out. It's amazing. We'll put the address in the show notes and on the YouTube video where this appears. Oh my gosh. But just be prepared to gain some weight because you kind of can't like have one bite and be like, oh, it's good. It's just like addictive. So shout out to you guys, worked really hard on it. The marketing for it too was done in such a way where it's just like really organic. No like paid advertisements. They just wanted people to try it out and give feedback and see what they think. And obviously everyone loved it. And now there's lines outside the door, no indoor seating. It's classic Italian style. Just really a cool story of entrepreneurship and of amazing food. Two of my favorite things. Shout out to Younis and Francesco. Amazing company you're building. And really hope you win that award. If I could vote, I would. I don't know how that works actually, but Time Out Riyadh should definitely give it to you. So shout out to y'all.
Yeah, and auguri to them.
Which means?
Congratulations, Mabruk.
Okay, Mabruk. I've heard Mabruk, not auguri. How many languages do you speak,
Well, he told me
Dr.
Francesco,
Hanaa?
so tanti
Well,
auguri.
of course, he's
to
from
him.
the north too. Great guy, really great guy. He personally showed up to bring that bakery box over. I have a picture of it. And like one of my best friends in New York is just like, we just talk about bread all the time because it's kind of hard to eat and stay not fat. And I sent it to him and he's like, make sure we go when I come to Riyadh and visit you because this looks amazing. It is. But yeah, shout out to y'all, Dr. Hanaa. See you next time.
Thank you, Lucien.
The 2030.